Summer Olympics are one of the biggest events in the world with billions of people watching. Athletes train their whole life to have a chance to compete in various disciplines during the day and in the Olympic Village at night. Host nations spend a lot of money to organize the games better than previous hosts. However, this wasn't always the case, so let's have a look at the weirdest Olympic event in history. The 1904 Summer Olympics were just the third one in modern time and the first one to be outside of Europe. After Athens and Paris, the Olympics were held in the beautiful town of St. Louis in Louisiana. And to anyone wondering why they chose this place, let me introduce you to these two guys, James Sullivan and David Francis. They hosted the World's Fair, which was held in Louisiana to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the purchase of the Louisiana Territory from the French. Due to construction delays, the celebration actually took place 1 year later than originally planned. And because that went so well, Sullivan and Francis thought they should also host the Olympics, which were earlier awarded to the city of Chicago. They threatened the organizing team in Chicago with starting their own event at the same time, and I don't know why, but Chicago was actually afraid and gave the games to St. Louis. Air travel wasn't available yet, and therefore it was a long and expensive journey for the athletes that bothered showing up. Well, most of them didn't, and there were only 648 participants from 12 different nations competing in the whole Olympics, 600 of them coming from North America. This led to a very close race in the medal count. But without a doubt, the craziest and most stupid event was the marathon. Only 32 participants from 7 nations started in the race. Some of them were experienced runners, but most of them were some rather odd characters. These are two Swana tribesmen from South Africa, whose names I can't pronounce. They were in St. Louis as part of the exhibition and spontaneously thought, why not compete in the marathon? They ran the race barefoot and wrote history, being the first black people to ever compete in the modern Olympics. Another one was Felix Carvajal, a Cuban postman who looks like Super Mario. He fundraised the money he needed to compete by running the entire length of Cuba. After arriving in New Orleans, he did what every person with such a difficult journey to the Olympics would do and lost all his money in a game of dice. After that, he had to hitchhike to Louisiana and just arrived a few hours before the race, hungry, sleep deprived, and still wearing his long pants, which another participant cut to shorts just before the start. Talking about the others, Carvajal wasn't the only one with an absolutely stunning mustache. Look at number 32, straight out of a really bad French commercial. The race started in the middle of the day at temperatures around 32 degrees Celsius on a newly planned route because the original one had been rained out. The course started with the athletes running 5 laps in the stadium before going out and running almost the entire race on dusty country roads. While doing so, the participants were accompanied by cars which also stirred up more dust for the runners to inhale. And because that was too easy, the runners also had to dodge traffic since the roads they were running on weren't closed for the race. At least James Sullivan sent up plenty of water stations so that the participants had enough to drink. Well, that was a lie. He set up exactly one and also forbid the coaches to give their athletes water. He wanted to minimize fluid intake to test the limits and effects of purposeful dehydration. His claim was eating and drinking while running is bad for the stomach. Apparently, no one thought that could be a bad idea. The race started and unbelievably, several participants had to drop out during the race because they could no longer move. Samuel Meller, who was leading at the halfway point, became so disoriented that he started running in the wrong direction and eventually had to give up. Closest to death was William Garcia, who was found on the side of the road coughing up blood. I couldn't find a picture of him, so here's a picture of Pablo Escobar because they probably look the same anyway. Only 14 out of the 32 participants even made it to the finish, which is crazy odds. Unfortunately, there was no sports betting available, otherwise Carvajal would have certainly won his money back. Undeterred by the fact that fewer than half of his marathoners finished, Sullivan would later write a book in which he reiterated his continued belief in the power of water abstinence. Not wanting to risk his life, Frederick Lord stepped out after 15 kilometers and hitched a ride for the next 17. While doing that, he was waving to the spectators. He then did what any normal person would do and re-entered the race. He reached the finish line in thunderous applause. Just as Alice Roosevelt, the daughter of US President Theodore Roosevelt, was about to crown Lords, a spectator revealed his cheating, and you can really see the disappointment in her eyes. Lords then claimed that he was only joking but was nevertheless banned for life from the Olympics. The official winner was the fully doped Thomas Hicks. Unlike driving in a car and drinking water, doping was not yet illegal back then. During the race, the thirsty Hicks kept asking his coaches for water. Since that was not allowed, they resorted to other means and did what any good coach would do: drug their athlete. They gave him a mixture of raw eggs and strychnine sulfate, a stimulant that in higher doses is used as a rat poison. A higher dose could have also killed Hicks, but since Hicks was not a rat like Lords and his coaches were quite experienced with drugging people with rat poison, he was able to continue the race. 2 miles before the finish line, his trainers decided it was time for a second dose, this time with some brandy to wash it down. After that, Hicks began hallucinating and begged for something to eat. So his trainers of course gave him more egg whites and brandy. The now drunk and drugged Hicks somehow managed to get into the stadium. The St. Louis Post describes the moment that followed. There was not a semblance of the elastic spring with which he had started. He must have heard the uproar about him, but he betrayed no sign of it. He was past that. He did look up once when the din was at its height. He was within a few yards of the finish. His lower jaw was hanging as an imbecility, his eyes stared blankly, but his pitiful expression didn't change. In a fabulous sprint, Hicks' coaches carried him over the line, making him the winner of the marathon. It took 4 doctors and 1 hour for Hicks to feel well enough just to leave the ground. He declared, "Never in my life have I run such a tough course. The terrific hills simply tear a man to pieces." And I'm sure we all believe him, since he looks as happy as Melania Trump when she has to spend time with her husband. Hicks finished in 3 hours and 28 minutes, which is 29 minutes longer than any other winning time of the Olympics in history. This may seem bad, but is actually quite impressive, since most of the other winners weren't blackout drunk and drugged during the race. Second place was awarded to Albert Corey, a French guy living in the USA who arrived without correct documents. Third place was awarded to Alton Newton, the most boring participant in the race. The only cool thing about him is his t-shirt. The Cuban gambler Carvajal finished in 4th place, but could have even won the race had he been as competitive as in the casino. On his run, he started chatting with various spectators and just had a good time. He even snatched a few peaches out of a spectator's car and ate them. Because that wasn't enough for him, he also ate some rotten apples that were laying next to the street. His stomach began cramping and he had to take a quick nap. Looks like Sullivan was right, and eating and drinking while running a marathon was truly bad for your health. Our South African warriors finished in 9th and 12th place. This was a major disappointment, as many observers were sure that Tanyane could have done better if he had not been chased nearly a mile off course by aggressive dogs. But hey, at least there were 2 of the very few people that survived the race. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel or else I will drug you with rat poison.